Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast Special Edition Series, where I preview and predict every college basketball men's conference tournament. And this is the 22nd of 31 episodes of the series. Now up is the Pac-12 tournament, which is going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, it's a big conference. 11 teams participating in it this year because Arizona obviously is dealing with their self-imposed postseason ban. So the tournament begins Wednesday, March 10th with the first round, the quarterfinals Thursday, March 11th, the semifinals Friday, March 12th, and the championship Saturday, March 13th. So without further ado, here we go. Wednesday, March 10th, 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, 1 o'clock p.m. Pacific Time. You got 9-seeded Washington State against 8-seeded Arizona State. Wazoo, 14-12 on the year, 7-12 in conference play. Arizona State, 10-13 on the year, 7-10 in conference play. Arizona State just ain't really their year this year, but I do project them as a favorite by 5.5, and the total of this game 144.5. So therefore, I have Arizona State advancing to the quarterfinals. The second of three games of the first round, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, 4 o'clock p.m. Pacific Time on the Pac-12 Network. 10-seeded Washington against 7-seeded Utah. Washington 5-20 overall, 4-16 in conference play. Utah 11-12 overall, 8-11 in conference play. My projections: Utah 8.5, total 140.5. Therefore, Utah to the quarterfinal. And the last of the three first round games on Wednesday, March 10th, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, 7 o'clock p.m. Pacific. 11-seeded California against 6-seeded Stanford. Cal on the year, 8-19 overall, 3-17 in conference play. And Stanford 14-12 overall, 10-10 in conference play. My projection here: Stanford 13.5, total 137. Therefore, Stanford to the quarterfinal. And then the quarterfinals Thursday, March 11th, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific on the Pac-12 Network. 8-seeded Arizona State against 1-seeded Oregon. Oregon 19-5 overall, 14-4 in conference play. I project Oregon by 11. Like I said, not really Arizona State's year, not your typical Bobby Hurley overachieving group. If anything, they did the opposite this year, and that was obviously underachieve. Redmi Martin really did not play the whole season. 21 games played, but I guess he came back, but he really didn't play much. Josh Christopher on that team as well, but Oregon's just much better than Arizona State. So Oregon on to the semifinals. And then 5-seeded Oregon State against 4-seeded UCLA. Oregon State 14-12 overall, 10-10 in conference play. UCLA 17-8 overall, 13-6 in conference play. My projection is UCLA by 10, total 139. Therefore, I have UCLA in the semifinals. The third of four quarterfinal games. This one is 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. By the way, UCLA, Oregon State, 2:30 p.m. Pacific, 5:30 p.m. Eastern. So, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. You have 7-seeded Utah against 2-seeded USC on the Pac-12 Network. USC on the season, 21-6 overall, 15-5 in conference play. My projection here is USC by 10.5. And by the way, as I've said on every show this series thus far, future totals are harder to project than future lines. So USC by 10.5 is my projection there for USC to the semifinals. And the last of four quarterfinal games, Thursday, March 11th, 11:30 p.m. on ESPN. You got 6-seeded Stanford against 3-seeded Colorado. Colorado on the season, 20-7 overall, 14-6 in conference play. My projection is Colorado by 5. Therefore, I have Colorado into the semifinals. So the first of two semifinal matchups on Friday, March 12th, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the Pac-12 Network. You got 4-seeded UCLA against 1-seeded Oregon. UCLA really faltered at the end of the year. I do still think they'll make the tournament. They're a pretty deep team. Johnny Juzang and Chris Smith and Tiger Campbell, J.B. Jaquez Jr. And then Oregon is just typical Oregon of them. They're just be awesome in the latter half of the season under Dana Altman. That's just what they do. They're led by two studs in Chris DeRate and Eugene Amarui. My projection is Oregon 2.5. Therefore, I have Oregon back in the championship game. And then the second of two semifinal games, 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. 3-seeded Colorado against 2-seeded USC. I won't be shocked if they end up flipping these games because I think ESPN wants Oregon UCLA on ESPN rather than Colorado and SC. But we'll see. But right now it says Colorado SC for ESPN. But good for those two teams. Colorado, a decent season for them. Ranked right now. The Buffaloes led by McKinley Wright the fourth, who is just a stud. I thought was always one of the more underrated players in college basketball. Then USC is led by freshman stud Evan Mobley, who I think is going to be a top 3 pick in the NBA draft this year. I think Mobley's the best player on the court in this game. USC, I have projected by 2.5, therefore USC to the championship. And the Pac-12 championship game, Saturday, March 13th, 10:30 p.m. on ESPN. 2-seeded USC against 1-seeded Oregon. You have Mobley on one side, and then you have DeRayton and Amarui on the other, as well as LJ Figueroa, who's played in big games before, Will Richardson too. I project Oregon by 2 in this championship game. Therefore, I have Oregon winning the 2021 Pac-12 tournament. USC, I think, will be an at-large. UCLA, I think, will be an at-large, but barely, maybe like an 11 seed or maybe a 12 seed playing game. And in Colorado, I think, will be in as well. I think that Oregon State will see the NIT probably, as well as Stanford. So there you have it for the 2021 Pac-12 tournament predictions. Next up is the Southland Conference.